All right, buckle up, everyone, because we are diving headfirst into some serious political drama today.
Ew, yeah, definitely drama.
So we're talking about Germany, you know.
Powerhouse of Europe.
Exactly, and their government just imploded.
Imploded, it's right.
And now they're on the fast track to a snap election.
Snap is right.
So we've got a stack of articles here from Tagesschau.de.
Oh, excellent source.
Germany's top news source.
Definitely.
And we're going to unpack exactly what happened, what it means, why you should care.
You know what's so fascinating about this?
Yeah.
Is that it really goes way beyond your typical political bickering.
Right.
This has the potential to, really reshape the entire German political landscape.
Oh.
And those ripples, they're going to be felt
Oh, yeah.
Across Europe and beyond.
For sure. So,
Yeah.
okay, let's set the scene a little bit.
Okay.
We're talking about the Impel Coalition.
Ah.
That's German for
The Traffic Light Coalition.
the Traffic Light Coalition,
Yeah.
which is made up of
The Social Democratic Party.
SPD,
The Greens.
the Greens,
And the Free Democratic Party.
the FDP.
Yeah.
They were supposed to be running the show, right?
They were. They were the coalition. Things went south
They went south fast.
very quickly.
Yeah.
And it's actually really unusual
What?
to see such a sudden and dramatic collapse
Right.
of a coalition government like this.
Yeah, I mean, what happened?
Well, the trigger event
Yeah.
was Chancellor Scholz firing the finance minister,
Lindner.
who was a member of the FDP.
Talk about a power move.
Yeah,
I mean, Schultz called this necessary,
right.
but Lindner felt liberated.
Liberated.
That doesn't really sound
It
like...
doesn't sound amicable.
No, not at
It
all.
really speaks to, I think, some deeper tensions
Yeah.
that were brewing beneath the surface here.
So to understand this, we really need to dig into the political philosophy
The underlying philosophies.
at play here, because you've got this ample coalition
Right?
bringing together parties with very different views
Very, very different.
on the role of government, economic policy.
Social issues, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, so is it like trying to mix oil and water?
In some ways, I think yes.
Oh.
The SPD under Scholz leans towards,
Okay.
a more traditional social democratic approach,
Right,
emphasizing social welfare, government intervention in the economy.
got it.
The Greens,
Of course.
as you might expect,
Yeah.
prioritize environmental protection and social justice.
Makes sense.
And the FDP, with Lindner at the helm,
Right.
champions free market principles, limited government intervention.
So very different approach.
Very different, and fiscal conservatism.
Okay, so you've got this coalition trying to balance these different viewpoints,
Right.
and then, boom, it explodes.
It explodes.
So what happens next?
So what happens next is
Sure.
Scholz, in a really bold move,
Okay.
calls for a vote of confidence,
The vote of confidence.
which is essentially
Yeah.
a way to force the dissolution of the Bundestag, which is the German parliament.
Oh, wow.
So that sets the stage for snap elections,
Snap elections.
scheduled for February 23rd, 2025.
So that's fast.
It's very fast.
Isn't that going to cause chaos?
It definitely adds, a layer of urgency,
Right.
unpredictability, yeah.
Yeah.
What
What about the smaller parties?
smaller parties in particular
Yeah.
will face immense challenges
Oh, wait.
because they have very limited time
Right.
to gather the support signatures necessary
Yeah.
to even participate
Oh, wow.
in the election.
So they're scrambling right now.
Oh, absolutely. They're scrambling
Yeah.
while the major players are gearing up
For a fight.
for a very, very fierce campaign battle.
So who are the major players here?
So we're talking about Chancellor Scholz from the SPD, of
Yeah.
course,
Okay.
Friedrich Merz, the leader of the Christian Democratic Union, or CDU,
CDU.
Markus Söder, the leader of the Christian Social Union, the CSU, which is basically the CDU's Bavarian counterpart, and then, of course, Christian Lindner,
Right. The recently
a
ousted.
recently ousted leader of the FDP.
Okay, let's break it down, starting with Schultz.
Okay.
He's the incumbent, right?
He is.
He's got experience on his side.
He does, and he's playing that card.
Okay.
Scholz is really portraying himself as the steady hand,
Okay.
in these turbulent times.
Right.
He's emphasizing his competence,
Got it.
his commitment to governing effectively,
Okay.
even in this kind of transitional phase.
So he wants to appear stable.
Stable, reliable, experienced,
And control.
in control, exactly. Even
No,
though,
everything's kind of falling apart.
right, exactly.
And in fact,
Yeah.
he's pushing to pass
Okay.
several key pieces of legislation.
Before the Bundestag dissolves.
Interesting.
It's a strategic move.
Okay, so he's trying to,
Demonstrate his leadership.
and shape the narrative in his favor.
Exactly. Exactly.
So he's not just sitting back
No.
and waiting.
He's actively trying to control the game.
Okay, smart. Now, what about Merz,
Merz.
the leader of the CDU?
So Merz is really seizing this opportunity
Okay.
to push for, I think, a significant policy shift.
In Germany.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's been a very vocal critic of the SPD's handling of, the economy,
Okay.
immigration, foreign policy, a number of things.
Right.
He's positioning himself as the strong leader that Germany needs.
To navigate these challenging times.
Exactly.
Right. So he's saying, look, the current government has failed.
Failed.
It's time for a change. I'm the one to lead it.
Exactly. That's exactly his message.
Okay. And is it working?
Well, it seems to be resonating with a segment of the population that's dissatisfied with the status quo.
Right. But
it's important to note that Merz's vision for Germany might not be welcomed by everyone.
I can imagine.
Why
is it?
Well, he represents a more conservative approach.
Okay.
And his stance on certain issues, like immigration, for example, sparked a lot of controversy.
So he's a polarizing figure.
He is.
But one who could gain ground.
Absolutely. He could definitely gain ground.
In this election, okay, what about Söder?
Ah, Söder.
The CSU leader.
He's a very complex figure.
How so?
Often plays his cards close to his chest.
Okay.
He's been critical
Of what?
of the government's perceived inaction, lack of decisiveness.
Right.
He tends to lean towards a more populist approach, focusing on things like Bavarian identity and regional autonomy.
So kind of a wild card.
Definitely a wild card.
Yeah.
Hard to predict which way he'll go.
Right. Okay. And last but not least, we've got
Lindner. Right.
Who triggered this whole thing.
He did.
What's he up to now?
Well, based on the Tagesschau.de articles,
Okay.
it seems like he's using this opportunity to advocate for a very fundamental shift in Germany's economic policy.
Interesting. Like what?
Calling for less government intervention, lower taxes, a greater emphasis on free market principles.
So basically the same policies.
The same policies that got him fired.
That led to the coalition's collapse.
Right. So does he have a chance of making a comeback?
That's the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
It's really too early to say for sure.
Okay.
But he's a charismatic, articulate politician.
Right.
He's likely to appeal to those voters who are frustrated
with the economy,
with the current economic situation,
right,
and who believe that less government is better.
Okay, so we have 4 players.
4 key players.
With very different visions for Germany.
Very different.
But they're not operating in a vacuum.
No, they're not.
This election is going to be influenced by a lot of pressing issues.
Absolutely.
You're talking about the economy.
The economy.
The Schuldenbremse is?
The Schuldenbremse, yes.
Which translates to debt break.
Debt break.
Yes.
Okay. And the future of the Deutschland ticket.
Deutschland ticket, yeah.
And, of course, the war in Ukraine.
Of course.
So let's unpack those one by one.
Okay.
Let's start with the Schuldenbremse.
The Schuldenbremse.
Because that sounds like a big deal.
It is.
So tell me about it.
So it's this fundamental principle
Okay.
of German fiscal policy.
Okay.
And it essentially limits the government's ability to take on new debt.
So they have to balance the budget.
Essentially, yes.
Okay, but doesn't that limit their ability
That's the debate.
to respond to crises?
Right.
Or invest in important programs?
That's exactly the debate.
So people who like it say what?
So proponents of the Schuldenbremse argue that it's essential for maintaining fiscal discipline and preventing runaway debt.
Right, that makes sense.
Opponents, on the other hand, argue that it's too rigid.
Okay.
And that it limits the government's ability to stimulate the economy. Right.
Or invest in key areas like education, infrastructure, you name it.
So this is going to be a big point of contention.
The major point of contention.
In this election.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, the Deutschland ticket.
The Deutschland ticket.
This has been a huge success.
Why?
Well, it allows people to travel on public transport across the entire country.
Wow.
For a fixed monthly fee.
That's amazing.
And it's, reduced traffic congestion.
Okay.
Made public transport more accessible.
And boosted the economy.
Boosted the economy, yeah.
That sounds great. So why would anyone want to change it?
Well, the challenge is sustainability.
What do you mean?
The Deutschland ticket is heavily subsidized.
Okay.
And there are concerns about how to fund it in the long term.
Right.
Some parties are arguing that it's just too expensive.
Okay.
And the subsidies should be reduced or eliminated.
Wow.
Others are saying it's a worthwhile investment.
Okay.
And the government should find a way to keep it going. So it's really...
There's balancing act.
Yeah, between popularity and...
Fiscal responsibility.
Fiscal responsibility, exactly.
Okay, now let's talk about the elephant in the room.
The war in Ukraine.
The war in Ukraine, how is this going to play into the election?
Well, the war in Ukraine has had
a
profound impact on Germany.
Yeah.
It's forced them to rethink, you know...
Their role in the world?
Their energy policy.
Their energy policy.
Their defense spending.
Oh, wow.
A lot of things.
Yeah. And it's put Scholz...
in a very tough spot.
So.
You know, he's trying to balance supporting Ukraine with managing the economic and social consequences...
At home?
...of the war at home.
Right.
And he's facing pressure from all sides.
What kind of pressure?
Well, some are calling for him to do more to support Ukraine, even if it means higher energy prices or increased military spending.
Right.
Others are urging him to prioritize
the needs of German citizens. The needs of German citizens who are already feeling the pinch of rising inflation, economic uncertainty.
So into real
high-stakes balancing act.
Voters are going to want to know.
They want to know where the candidates stand.
Yeah, how they're going to navigate
this complex geopolitical landscape.
Yeah.
How they intend to protect Germany's interests while upholding its values.
Okay, so all of that is going on.
All of that.
And then we also have to consider the potential impact.
The potential impact of the U.S. election on all of this. Trump's recent victory.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
that's a huge wild card.
It's a wild card.
How do you see that playing out?
It's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
But it's likely to create challenges for whoever wins the German election.
Regardless of who wins.
Yeah, because Trump's America First policies could lead to
trade disputes,
disagreements over NATO.
Increased tensions on a number of fronts.
So Germany is facing a perfect storm.
A perfect storm.
Of challenges.
Political crisis.
Yeah.
A looming election.
A war.
A war in Europe.
A potentially unpredictable. U.S. president.
Volatile mix. Mistakes
are high. Incredibly high.
So we've talked about the trigger.
The political earthquake.
That set off this whole snap election.
Right.
We've talked about the key players
vying for power.
We've talked about the major issues
that are likely to dominate the campaign.
Right.
Yeah.
But there's one thing we haven't really explored yet.
Okay.
And that is what Scholz is trying to accomplish.
With
this last-minute legislative push before the Bundestag dissolves.
That's a great question.
He's trying to pass all these laws, right?
Yeah, he is.
It's almost like cramming for an exam.
It's a bit like that, yeah.
But with higher stakes.
With much higher stakes.
What's on the agenda?
So one key area
is income tax relief.
Okay.
Specifically addressing what's called cold progression.
Cold progression, what is that?
So you see, when inflation pushes wages up, people might end up in a higher tax bracket.
Okay.
Even though their purchasing power hasn't actually increased.
So it's like getting a raise.
Right.
That's immediately eaten up by taxes.
Exactly.
So that doesn't seem fair.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
And Scholz is trying to address this with what they're calling more net from gross.
More net from gross, okay.
Basically adjusting the tax brackets to account for inflation.
So people actually get to keep more money.
More of their hard-earned money, yeah.
Okay, so this is probably popular.
Likely to be very popular with a lot of voters.
Right.
You know, it's about
putting money in people's pockets.
Putting money in people's pockets.
Which is always good when you're running for re-election.
Always a good look for an incumbent, yes.
Right. And it kind of speaks to...
It ties into...
this broader theme.
The broader theme of economic security. That Scholz is emphasizing.
Right. He's saying like...
You know, I understand
the challenges everyday Germans are facing.
And I'm taking action. To address them.
Okay, so that's one policy.
That's one.
What else is he pushing?
Another key area is the growth initiative. Which is this package of measures aimed at boosting the German economy.
Okay, so we talked about this a little earlier.
Touched on it briefly, yeah.
Let's unpack it.
It's worth unpacking a bit further because I think it reveals a lot about Scholz's approach to economic policy.
So what's in this growth initiative?
Well, it's a multi-pronged approach.
Okay.
Encompassing things like infrastructure investments, tax breaks for businesses, policies aimed at promoting innovation. Digitalization, exactly.
So making Germany
a more attractive place to do business.
Got it.
Fostering entrepreneurship.
Okay.
And driving technological advancement.
So it's a mix of like traditional
infrastructure
spending, like roads and bridges.
Bridges, yeah.
And forward-looking
investments.
Things like
research and development.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this mix reflects
the challenges
and opportunities
facing the German economy.
Exactly.
Right.
So they need to modernize
the
infrastructure, support those traditional industries,
right,
but also position themselves at the forefront of these new technologies.
That's a lot to juggle.
Do
you think it'll work?
It's a complex question.
I bet.
Depends who you ask.
Sure.
Supporters of Scholz's approach argue that it's a balanced and pragmatic way to stimulate growth and create jobs.
Right, but the critics
argue that it's not ambitious enough. It
would go far enough
to address things like
income inequality, climate change.
Right, yeah.
Big issues.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of debate.
About
whether this is the right approach.
Right.
But it's clear
that
Scholz is trying to signal
that he's taking the economy seriously.
He's taking it seriously.
Yeah.
He's not just throwing money at problems.
Right.
But trying to create a more
sustainable,
competitive economy. For the future.
Exactly.
Okay, so another policy Scholz is pushing is an increase in child benefit. Yeah.
So this is a
more direct way
to help families.
to provide financial support to families, those who are
Sure.
struggling.
Yeah, with the rising cost of living.
Exactly.
This seems like a no-brainer,
You would think. Yeah, help families.
especially those with young children.
Why would anyone oppose this?
You'd be surprised.
Really?
There are always concerns. The cost of such programs, their impact on the budget.
Okay.
Some argue that
Yeah.
these kinds of social programs
When you say
create
it,
dependency.
Disincentivize work.
Okay, so Scholz is
Scholz is betting
that
this policy will resonate
with voters
with voters,
Okay.
particularly those who are
feeling the pinch
feeling the pinch
of inflation, worried about the future
worried about the future
for their children.
Right. It's way of showing
But he cares.
he cares about families,
Yeah.
about everyday struggles
Yeah.
people are facing.
Okay.
It's a message that can cut across political divides,
Yeah.
for sure.
Okay. And now this last piece of legislation.
This one's a bit more nuanced.
Okay.
It's about protecting
Right.
the independence
Okay.
of the Federal Constitutional Court. Why is he prioritizing this
That's where
with everything else going on?
I think Scholz's long game thinking becomes apparent.
Interesting.
The Federal Constitutional Court is the highest court
In Germany.
responsible for upholding the Constitution, ensuring the rule of law by strengthening
It's independent.
its independence.
Yeah.
He's essentially
The
reinforcing
foundations of German democracy.
the foundations of German democracy. Exactly.
It's like he's building a firewall
A firewall.
around democracy.
Yeah, around the core principles.
To protect it from political influence.
Political interference, erosion, all of that.
Wow. That's a powerful move.
It is.
So it's about
upholding democratic norms.
even in the face of
political turbulence. Rising populism.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a message that will resonate
with voters who are concerned about the future
of democracy
in Germany and beyond.
So we've got a clearer picture now.
I think so.
Of what Scholz is trying to do.
With this last-minute push.
Yeah, it's about
addressing pocketbook issues.
Okay.
Trying to stimulate the economy.
Supporting families.
Reinforcing
the foundations of German democracy.
Exactly.
And all this is happening.
It's the backdrop
of this incredibly election timeline. Where the smaller parties are scrambling
just to get on the ballot.
And the major players
are already positioning themselves
for a
fierce campaign battle.
Right. It's like this high-stakes game of political chess.
Yeah.
And the moves they make.
In the next few months will have huge consequences.
Huge consequences for Germany.
For Germany and for the world.
Speaking of these players,
right.
We've talked about their positions a bit.
We've touched on them, yeah.
But I think it's worth going.
Diving a little bit deeper. Into their potential for success.
So you've got Scholz,
the experienced incumbent.
Trying to project stability and competence.
Exactly.
You've got Merz,
the challenger,
offering conservative vision And capitalizing on the discontent with the status quo.
With the status quo.
And then you've got
Souter,
the wild card.
Wild card, who can disrupt everyone's plans.
And then you can't forget about Lindner.
The
ousted finance minister.
Still a force to be reckoned with.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a fascinating mix.
Of personalities and ideologies.
To understand how this election might go.
We need to consider...
Not just their positions.
Not just their individual positions, but also the potential for alliances.
The coalition.
The coalitions.
Who's going to team up with who?
Right.
What does that mean?
For Germany's future.
For Germany's future. So let's get into that.
Let's get into the coalition game.
All right. The coalition game.
Who's likely to team up with whom? Yeah. And what would that mean?
For Germany.
For Germany.
Right.
So based on their current positions and, historical trends, there are a few potential scenarios that stand out.
Let's hear it.
One possibility is a continuation of the current center-left coalition.
Okay.
With the SPD and the Greens.
The SPD and the Greens joining forces again.
But
wouldn't that require them to overcome the same tensions?
Right. Politics is all about negotiation and compromise.
Right. So
they would have to find common ground.
On things like
economic policy, environmental regulations.
Right. And could they?
Well, they've worked together before.
Right.
They might just be able to hammer out a deal that satisfies both parties.
So it's possible.
It's possible.
But it wouldn't be easy.
It wouldn't be easy.
Now, what about the other side?
The other side?
Could we see a shift to the right with a CDU FDP coalition?
That's definitely a possibility, one that a lot of analysts are watching very closely.
And why is that?
Well, because Merce and Lindner have both expressed support for free market principles, limited government intervention, and a tougher stance on immigration.
Okay, so they
could potentially form a pretty powerful alliance.
Yeah, that could shift German politics.
Yeah, in a more conservative direction.
So that would be...
It would be a pretty dramatic shift.
A dramatic shift for Germany.
What would that look like?
Well, such a coalition would likely lead to some significant policy changes.
In what areas?
Particularly in areas like taxation, social welfare, environmental regulations, you name it.
So a lot of changes.
A lot of potential changes.
And also...
It would also signal, I think, a more assertive foreign policy. Potentially leading to some tensions within the European Union.
So we've got these two potential coalitions. Two main contenders, I'd say.
The center-left option.
SPD Green.
And then the center-right option.
Yeah, CDU, FDP.
But what about Souter and the CSU?
Right.
Where do they fit in?
So that's the wild card, right?
They're not always easy to predict.
No, the CSU is technically the Bavarian sister party.
To the CDU?
To the CDU, but they often chart their own course.
They do.
Prioritizing
Bavarian interests. And regional autonomy.
Yeah.
So could they join a CDU-led coalition?
They could, but they would likely demand significant concessions in return.
So they could be the kingmakers in this election.
They could be the party that tips the scales.
Wow. Right.
One way or the other.
That's a lot of power.
It is.
It's a reminder that German politics is
complex,
multifaceted,
in regional identity, party allegiances,
all play a significant role.
And it's a system
that's facing a very pivotal moment. Okay, we've explored the potential coalitions.
The main contenders, yeah.
But there's another wild card we have to consider.
Okay.
And that is...
the smaller parties.
Scrambling
to get on the ballot.
Right. Could they actually make a difference?
That's a great question.
In this election.
And one that I think often gets overlooked.
Because everybody's focused on the
big players.
The major player.
Yeah, but those smaller parties, despite their limited resources, name recognition, could actually play a significant role in shaping the outcome.
How so?
Well, remember, German elections are based on a system of proportional representation.
Proportional representation. So that means...
That means that the number of seats a party wins... is directly proportional.
To the percentage of votes.
To the percentage of votes they receive.
So even if they don't win a majority.
Exactly.
They can still win seats.
And
potentially influence.
The formation of a coalition. So in a close election.
Yeah.
Where no single party.
Wins a majority.
Wins a clear majority.
Right.
Those smaller parties can hold a lot of sway.
They could actually decide.
They could be the deciding factor.
Wow.
In whether a center-left or a center-right coalition takes power.
So that's pretty powerful.
It is.
For parties that are often dismissed as
marginal or irrational. Marginal, yeah.
It speaks to the importance of paying attention to the full spectrum of political views.
Okay.
Not just those represented
by the major parties.
By the dominant parties, yeah.
Right.
You know, those smaller parties often represent
the voices
of those who feel unheard, ignored by the political establishment.
So it's not just about
the big names, the headline grabbing policies. It's about understanding the nuances
of the political landscape
and how even those
seemingly small
or insignificant players
can have a big impact. Can have a huge impact.
That's fascinating.
It is.
So as we're heading into the final stretch
of this deep dive.
Yeah. I want to kind of address the elephant in the room.
Okay. Why does you care?
Yeah. Why should the listener care?
That's the most important question.
About what's happening.
Of all.
Yeah.
And the answer is simple.
Okay.
Germany is a global powerhouse.
Right.
You know, its economy, its politics, its culture.
Yeah.
All of these things have a profound impact.
On the world.
Okay,
I get that. But can you give me some concrete examples?
Sure.
How might this election
directly impact
our
lives?
Yeah, my life as a listener.
Let's start with the economy.
Okay.
Germany is the largest economy in Europe, one of the largest in the world. Its economic policies, its trade relationships, its investments, all of these things have a direct impact
on the global economy. If Germany goes into recession,
it's going to have a ripple effect
across the world.
Across the globe, yeah.
And if Germany invests in renewable energy,
it's going to create opportunities
for other countries,
for businesses and workers in other countries.
So what happens in the German economy?
Affects everyone.
Affects our jobs.
Our jobs.
Our investments. Our ability to just buy things.
To buy goods and services.
It's all connected.
It's all interconnected, yeah.
But it's not just about the economy. No. Germany is also
a key player
on the world stage.
Diplomatically.
A leading member of the EU.
Of the European Union.
Major contributor to NATO. Powerful voice.
In international organizations.
Right. So the policies of the next German government
will have a significant impact.
On big issues.
Like climate change, global security, human rights.
Okay, so, for example,
if
Germany takes a strong stance on climate change,
it could push other countries to follow suit. If Germany decides to reduce its military spending,
that could affect NATO.
It could have implications for NATO's ability
to deter aggression.
Yeah.
And these are decisions
that will have real-world consequences.
Everyone.
For people all over the planet.
Okay, so we've established that what happens in Germany matters.
It matters a lot.
But with all this uncertainty,
all these potential scenarios,
how can we as individuals stay informed?
That's a great question.
And engaged.
And it gets to the heart of what we're trying to do here.
On Deep Dive.
On the Depth Dive, yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we believe that knowledge is power.
Knowledge is power.
And that informed citizens
are
essential for a healthy democracy.
Okay, so what's your advice?
Stay curious.
Keep
asking questions.
Seek
out diverse perspectives.
Don't just rely on headlines.
Or sound bites.
Right. Dig deeper. Read beyond the surface. Trying to understand the nuances.
Yeah.
Of the issues.
Exactly.
So what can we do?
Read articles from reputable news sources.
Okay.
Listen to podcasts that offer in-depth analysis.
Right.
Engage in respectful dialogue
with people
who hold different views. Yeah.
That's important.
It is. And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Ask questions.
The more you learn,
the more you understand.
You'll understand the complexities of these issues. And how they impact your life.
And remember,
it's an ongoing process.
Yeah.
The German election
it's just one chapter.
Is just one chapter in a much larger story.
The political landscape
is constantly shifting.
And it's up to us
to engage.
Stay informed.
Get informed.
Okay, so we've covered a lot.
We have.
In this deep dive.
We've explored the political crisis.
That triggered this snap election.
The key players, the major issues.
The potential coalition.
The potential impact.
The impact this election could have on the world.
On the world.
And we've talked about how important it is.
To stay informed.
To stay engaged.
And curious.
So as we wrap up,
I
want to leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed.
In the midst of all this.
Powerless.
Yeah, with all this political drama.
Right.
But it's important to remember that democracy is a participatory process.
It's not just about voting.
It's not just about casting a vote every few years. It's about staying informed. Engaging in dialogue. It's holding our leaders accountable.
Recognizing that.
Our voices matter.
Our voices matter.
Our actions have consequences.
Yeah.
And we have a responsibility to shape the world we want to live in.
It starts with understanding. The complexities of the world around us.
The forces that shape our lives.
The choices we have to make.
So stay curious.
Stay engaged.
And stay tuned.
If you enjoy our daily news podcast and want to stay updated, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell for notifications. Your support really helps us bring you the latest news every day. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode.